This is what it's like in downtown New Orleans right now. It is just after 8:20 in the morning Eastern time, and stuff is flying down the street. These are the hurricane force winds. All right, that's it, guys. I'm going to come back in. We got debris goes flying. We're going to let it go.
Here at Mobile, it's not looking good, guys. This is a business right here you see in front of me, and if you will notice there, an entire billboard sign has gone crashing through the building. That billboard sign has been completely uprooted. There are down power lines.
Well, the pictures certainly tell the story, and all along
in New Orleans prior, but it looks like after the Category 4 storm surge at that very same location, 6 to 9 feet of water in and around many portions of New Orleans.
Katrina left behind. Check out what's left of this business area in New Orleans. Street signs floating, a giant gaping hole left on the side of this building. That computer there looks like it wasn't even touched by the storm, though, but tons of rubble piled up on the ground below it. Speaking of piling up, these abandoned cars were crushed by falling bricks. The top of a Corvette caved in, and the windows of an SUV there blown out by the fierce wind. Palm trees swayed back and forth on the sidewalk. Some of them toppled over onto power lines. And you're getting a look now at the first pictures of the Superdome after the storm ripped through. The massive structure had trouble withstanding the storm. It ripped 2 giant holes in the building, and the 10,000 people taking refuge inside getting a bit wet. To say the least, generators are working overtime to keep the lights on in there. And here are some pictures of actual pieces of that dome dangling close to people's heads. Well, this bird taking flight, but not because it wanted to. Hurricane Katrina also having an impact on animals as well. The bird was trying to fight the wind, but no match for the major storm. The poor thing, it was blown around and then tossed backwards. We are going to head back out live now to Destin, Florida, in the Panhandle area, where Cal Raymaker has been monitoring the conditions there. Hi, Cal.
Hi, Shelley. You know, when you were live with you last night, we were, several hundred miles further inland towards mainland Florida, and we talked about a lot of the damage that was still out here from Dennis, and these people have been through a lot. Dennis really did cause, I think, a lot more problems than people down in Central Florida realized. So they were obviously scared to death when Katrina went through southern Florida and then started churning and possibly heading this way. So a big relief tonight for a lot of people here who didn't have to evacuate, who weren't forced to evacuate. They can stay in their beds. They can keep going to their jobs. But it's nice for them to be kind of on the other side of a hurricane, helping people instead of being helped.
Remembered for many things, including the flooding of New Orleans, Jefferson Parish, Plaquemine, Orleans Parish, St. Bernard Parish, other parishes across New Orleans, the New Orleans area, walloped. Tomorrow night, we're going to be bringing you pictures from Biloxi. I fear they may be even worse than these images. Hard to believe. A long way to cleaning up. Let's move on now, and we're going to take you straight through to the situation.
We've got one of the truly incredible stories of an escape from the city of New Orleans. You have to hear it to believe it. We begin tonight in Mobile, Alabama, a city essentially underwater at this hour. That's where we find MSNBC's Ron Blom. Ron, what is this in Mississippi? He joins us now by phone from a shelter in that city. Mr. Mayor, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Give us
the hardest part here earlier this afternoon. The winds were about 60 miles an hour. We lost a lot of trees. The power was out for 70,000 citizens. We have kids over at Jackson State University and kids who came up from Tulane University to get away from the weather, and we had a power outage over there and also at Tougaloo College. And pretty big portion of the city right now is in the dark, and the crews are out working. Our priorities are to remove all of the debris and leaves and trees from the street so that we can have safe passage, and then we'll start repairing the electrical lines.
Mayor Melton, why did I had read earlier today that people from New Orleans, from Tulane specifically, were evacuated to Jackson. Why Jackson?
That's an agreement that the two universities have had for years, and I'm very pleased to see the kids here from Tulane. They're wonderful kids. The football team is here, the soccer team, and then the general student body. I've been spending a lot of time with them. But there is a reciprocating agreement between the universities that has been in place for a number of years, and it's a great experience for the kids at Jackson State University and for the city of Jackson.
So if there is a crisis at one university, then that student body relocates to the other university?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Now, tell me about injuries in Jackson. Are you familiar with any?
We've had one fatality. Earlier this afternoon, a tree fell on a home, and a lady did lose her life.
And what about downed power lines?
Yes, sir. We have them all over the city. They're working on those now. We had to wait until the wind died down a little bit for the safety of the crew and also the preservation of the equipment that they're using. The wind has died down considerably, and they're out working. But we have a lot of power lines down throughout the city here.
Now, when a power line goes down, pardon my ignorance, is it always live?
We assume that they are live. We don't take that chance, and we will close the streets off, and we've been doing that this afternoon. We had one to go down just right in front of City Hall, and we had to block that area of downtown Jackson off. But I would rather be safe than sorry, and my assumption is that they are live. Although the electricity may be off in other parts of the city, I would just rather not take that chance. I have implemented a curfew here in the city until 8 a.m. in the morning because I don't want people out where they don't have clear vision and accidentally step on or run across a power line or a tree limb.
Now, Mr. Mayor, we have breaking news coming across our screen from the Associated Press. 50 hurricane-related deaths in Harrison County, Mississippi. Can you tell us where that is precisely?
Yes, sir. That's on the Gulf Coast. Harrison County is just near the place you were talking about earlier when your meteorologist was giving the report about the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Harrison County is down on the coast.
Right. About how far is that from where you are?
About 150 miles.
What time did the storm hit Jackson?
Between 6:15 and 7 o'clock.
Where were you?
We were out at the university with the kids and making our rounds and making sure that everybody was safe and secure. We've been out most of the day. The only time I've come to this location is to talk to you guys.
So were you indoors when the storm hit, or were you outside?
No, we were indoors.
What was it like?
Well, I'm from Houston, Texas, and I've lived through hurricanes most of my life, but it was still pretty scary. At my own personal home, I lost 6 trees. I mean, very big trees. And the thing that's so fascinating about the power of the storm is that a lot of the trees that are down, and I'm talking about oak trees, they were uprooted. I mean, you can see the roots of the tree, and that's a pretty strong wind.
That sounds like a tornado to me. Did you have tornadoes in Jackson?
No, sir. We've not had any indications of any type of tornado activity. It was just a tremendous amount of rain accompanied by some very, very strong winds, and the winds were periodic. They would come very hard, and they stopped for a while, and then they would come back, and took out quite a few trees here in the capital city.
Wow, that's amazing. Frank Melton, Mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, thanks a lot for joining us. I know you're busy.
You bet. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, the pictures you were looking there are similar to the ones you're going to see in a moment. When we come back, we'll have fresh video.
I used to live in Pennsylvania, so I'm not used to nothing like this. So I'm a little nervous. The ceiling up there, water through the windows.
In the meantime, American will pray. Pray for the health and safety of all our citizens.
Welcome back. The Associated Press reporting at least 50 dead in the Gulf Coast county of Harrison in the state of Mississippi tonight. Well, 80% of New Orleans' 500,000 residents heeded the evacuation order. None of them is yet allowed to return to that inundated city. When they do return, they'll find a potentially deadly, certainly expensive mess. Lieutenant Kevin Cowan is with the Louisiana Office of Emergency Preparedness. He joins us now by phone to elaborate on what's happening there. Lieutenant Cowan, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So what are people going to find when they return to New Orleans?
Unfortunately, it looks like there's going to be a lot of water. Most of New Orleans is flooded under several feet of water. A lot of trees knocked down, a lot of power lines. It's pretty messy.
So when you say water, is this salt water, fresh water? What's in the water?
It's a combination. There was a lot of heavy rains. There was some breaching of the levee system that pushed the water into St. Bernard Parish and into New Orleans proper itself, flooding neighborhoods. Streets are completely flooded.
So I take it it's not clean. So what sort of medical problems might that kind of water give rise to? What are you worried about?
Well, there's always the possibility for any type of stagnant water to set, but what we're planning is the pumps in New Orleans hopefully will be able to pump out the water relatively quickly. Crews are working nonstop to make sure that these pumps are operational and pumping out as much water as they can. Efforts are being made to repair any damages to the levee system so that more water will not be seeping back in, so it's easier to pump the water out and not have to worry about the backfill.
Well, I know there was a real fear last night that the levees wouldn't hold during the storm and would collapse. How did they fare?
Actually, they fared pretty well. There were some breaches where water was pushed over the top. I'm sure that there were areas that the levee did fail. We haven't gotten complete reports. We're still getting reports from the various parishes, trying to find out the damage that they have been able to assess on the ground. Once they get that information, they then in turn let us know so that we can coordinate getting the resources from the various state and federal agencies to help fix the problem.
People must be really anxious to return to their homes in New Orleans and Jefferson Parish. How long is it going to be before they can come back, do you think?
We're still waiting on the damage assessments. Unfortunately, the evacuees that did leave are not able to return yet because we want to make sure that it's safe for them to come back in. Sure, there are people that did stay in New Orleans, which we really couldn't control, and they're going about their business. Unfortunately, they're in a dangerous situation because there are power lines that are down, some of them still in the water, could cause electrocution. So we're trying to stress the importance for people to be very, very wary outside in the water, splashing around, driving through the water, because it is still very dangerous. We want to make sure that it is safe for those evacuees to return to a safe situation so that we can start the disaster recovery process.
All right. Lieutenant Kevin Cowan, the Louisiana Office of Emergency Preparedness, thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, before Katrina arrived on Monday morning,
everyone just tried to keep it together to get out of there.
We all calmed down as soon...
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
Oh, we all calmed down as soon as we were out of the 7-hour traffic jam out of New Orleans. We all calmed down and we started talking. They said, "You're not going." So I went home with her, and I'm happy now that I went home with her because it would have been awful sitting in that gym for days.
So
So we've been beginning to get on the taps of the windows, the debris from the trees that are beginning to shred. You see, I just lost my hat.
If I were to step about another 50 feet that way, it would be even stronger, and it's also picking up, as you can see. Flying debris. We've got a piece right back here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's starting to roll around the parking lot there. And I mean, that's the stuff we're concerned about here with, but, you know, we're watching it. Here now we're dealing with the wind and very light rain, and as you can see, the wind is still substantial. The enduring images of major weather events are inevitably the people sent to cover them, braving the elements to bring us their stories. John Donnelly is the editor of NOLA.com and MardiGras.com, the major online affiliates of the New Orleans Times-Picayune. He wrote out Katrina Sunday night and Monday, and he joins us now. Mr. Donnelly, thanks a lot.
Hey, Tucker.
So how was it? Are you glad you stayed?
Well, it was my job. I wouldn't have missed it.
Was it as dramatic as you thought it would be?
It was a little scarier than I thought it would be. I've actually flown into a hurricane before on a hurricane hunter flight, but that was a nice, safe C-130.
This was scarier than flying into a hurricane on a propeller plane.
Yes.
So set the scene for us. Where were you when it hit?
We're in what we are calling the hurricane bunker. We created it after Hurricane George to allow us in the Times-Picayune to keep publishing something in a major weather event. We're in the interior behind 3 levels of walls of the 3rd floor of the Times-Picayune building, which is on the edge of downtown New Orleans, just a little north of the Superdome. And the outer wall windows are bulletproof glass, and then we have executive offices and then the newsroom, and we're back another level in what's normally the photo lab. And this is the only area that now has electricity. We've been, general electricity's been off since about 6 this morning. So
now, have you been down? I think most of our viewers, if they're familiar with New Orleans, will be familiar with the French Quarter. Have you been down there?
No, we have not been able to get out at all today until just about sunset. We were still having pretty high winds, and we're far enough away from the downtown area that it's dangerous to get out unless you're in a very big vehicle. So we're planning to go down there tomorrow to see what kind of mess we got.
Is it dangerous because there's so much water in the streets, or because of down power lines?
At the time before it started getting dark, we were still getting tropical storm gusts, and we're now surrounded by water here at the Times-Picayune building. All the roads are not real deep, but headlight 4 feet deep, that range. So we're kind of isolated out here.
Now, there were some reports this afternoon, and I have no idea if they're accurate. Maybe you can tell me that there was some looting in New Orleans today. Have you heard that?
Yes, there definitely was some looting in New Orleans. We had a couple of our photo and reporting teams out making short forays in the nearby neighborhood, and they had friendly chats with the people filing out of the stores with their bags of goods.
Are there no police around? There are no National Guardsmen? No one to stop it?
All of the emergency crews that are out at the moment, there's no law enforcement that I know of, and I'm sitting under a police scanner. I'm not hearing any law enforcement type calls. It's all trying to get the people off the roofs in East New Orleans and the 9th Ward and Tremay before they drown. Most of the efforts being made to try and save people's lives.
Yeah, I imagine it's law enforcement triage at the moment. John Donnelly, editor of NOLA.com, affiliated with the Times-Picayune. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you much.
Coming up, it was a hurricane problem until just hours ago, but Katrina has left a different kind of problem now, and the man in charge of fixing it joins us next with a forecast.
Pretty accurate at that point in time. I think there's an opportunity to do a little bit more research to increase our knowledge of intensity, but I think the whole team did a good job.
Do you think that, I know that there was, at least in the press, the expectation that the effects of it were going to be biblical in one of the words that was floating around yesterday. Do you think we overestimated its capacity to destroy, or it was just good luck at the end that it didn't?
Well, I think the cone of uncertainty is something that you guys in the media did a real good job explaining to the American public this time. I think that beginning on Friday afternoon, we had New Orleans included in the cone of uncertainty, and had the track been just a couple of miles further west, that northeast quadrant of the storm surge would have exacerbated the issue for metropolitan New Orleans area, and you'd be doing a much different story than you are tonight.
Yes, thank God we're not. There's been a lot of talk comparing this hurricane to previous hurricanes. Can you put this into some perspective for us? How big was this relative to hurricanes over the past 50 years?
Well, a lot of people are talking about Betsy and Camille. I think with the significant increase in the population in the coastal counties in and around America, we'll see some pretty significant, the magnitude of the storm indicates that that there are going to be some substantial losses overall. I'm just happy that a lot of people were able to get out.
So is this something, demographic changes, that's something you all worry about? More people live on the coast, I think, than have lived on the coast at any time in American history. Does that mean that every storm is potentially more deadly?
Potentially, you bet. And our sister organization in Bureau of Census is also part of the Department of Commerce, along with NOAA and the Weather Service. And they tell us that 53% of America now lives in coastal communities, and that trend continues, and that trend is worrisome to people who are charged with protecting lives and property. So yes, that's something that we pay attention to.
I bet it is. General David Johnson.
Just before dawn, Katrina heads northwest, straight for the coast, down a hair from its 175-mile-per-hour peak. But still a ferocious Category 4, and New Orleans buckles in for a bumpy ride. The storm makes landfall at 6:10 local time.
Hurricane Katrina, 140-mile-per-hour winds, a strong Category 4 storm, made landfall early on Monday. Southern portions of Louisiana, the worst damage throughout coastal locations of Mississippi all the way to Mobile.
But what is hardship for Mississippi and Alabama, where severe flooding is making rivers out of roads, spares New Orleans from disaster.
The storm surge has been much bigger than anything ever before. The result has been, in some cases, people being trapped.
By 10 a.m. Central Time, Katrina is weaker, a Category 3 storm now, but still plenty bad news for people here in New Orleans.
It was incredible. The noise is what's scary.
You don't have to go far to find scenes that look like they're right out of a disaster movie. This is just off of Canal Street.
Biloxi, Mississippi now, and winds are howling. There's flying debris everywhere and high tide in the middle of the city.
Right now, the strongest part of Katrina barreling through Biloxi, Mississippi, as the eye of the storm is completely over us right now, with winds gusting in excess of 90 miles per hour, possibly over 100 at times.
Our Gulf Coast is getting hit and hit hard. In the meantime, America will pray. Pray for the health and safety of all our citizens.
Noon Central. Katrina is now a Category 2 storm, but winds are still gusting to 105 miles per hour. Sadly, it's not enough to stop looters in New Orleans. In New Orleans, a city mostly below sea level, residents emerging to assess the damage find the water is rushing in.
I wouldn't do it again. I wouldn't stay home. The ceiling up there, water through the windows.
And folks rush to help. Katrina may have moved on, but she's still causing trouble to hundreds of thousands of people in New Orleans who are either homeless or without power tonight.
Coming up, the scariest description you've ever heard of what's in all that water currently flooding New Orleans. Put it this way, alligators and snakes are not the creepy part. Stay tuned. Town hardest hit by Katrina. NBC News' David Schuster is in Biloxi. He's been there since this began. We talked to him last night. He joins us now. David, I'm glad you're okay, first off. Second, what's the latest? We're hearing conflicting reports on people dead. AP reporting 50 in Harrison County. There are conflicting reports saying as few as 4. Do you know anything about this?
Well, apparently NBC's contacted this official, and he's denying that he said that.
But every high-rise hotel in New Orleans was full to capacity in many cases. I think the Hyatt was among them. There were people in that hotel when that happened. All that glass went somewhere, not clear where it went, down, of course. Not sure at this point if anyone was hurt by it. We'll be right back. You're watching video we've just received of a Coast Guard rescue. We believe it's in Louisiana. You can see people on their roofs, water all the way up to the roof line. People clamoring out to be rescued by the Coast Guard. They've apparently chopped through the roofs from the inside. You can see that brown stuff is water right there. That's amazing. I believe this was shot today at some point. Part of a huge trove of videotape MSNBC has just obtained. We'll be showing it throughout the night and into tomorrow. Haven't even had time to see most of it, but we're going to bring it to you as soon as we do. Look at that.
Well, Mississippi bore the brunt of Katrina. Is Tennessee the next state in her sights? An update from the Weather Center when the situation returns. Karen's, Bill?
Well, Tucker, we're continuing to watch this huge storm system. The clouds from this storm now covering everywhere east of the Mississippi River. Luckily, though, the storm is considerably weaker. We got the new update in from the National Hurricane Center. Now it's at 60 miles per hour, maximum sustained winds, gusts to about 70. So for northern portions here, it looks like for Mississippi and Alabama, we're still going to have some minor power outages. Maybe some of those old trees that are kind of rotted that should have come down anyways. They may come down in wind gusts like this. The storm is going to continue to weaken. The storm's moving very quickly, too, to the north-northeast at 22 miles per hour. And that's another good thing. We're not going to see a lot of flooding because of the rains from this system. It'll still be a tropical storm come tomorrow morning, just probably on the north side of Nashville, and then it should be about an area of low pressure over the top of Kentucky. But heavy rain on this path. It looks like Cincinnati, Louisville, Lexington, and then more or less just some rain as we go throughout the overnight hours up towards Cleveland, Columbus, and then Buffalo towards Wednesday. By Wednesday night, the storm should be completely gone. Forecast,
lots more ahead all through the night and into tomorrow. We're going to be telling you exactly what's happening in the aftermath of Katrina. But now I want to show you video we've just received. This is apparently a marina fire in Louisiana, shot, of course, from the air. Pulling back, there it is. Look at that. You can see a lot of the boats clearly wrecked in the marina. The outlines of this disaster just becoming clear. We'll bring you the details as we get them. That's the situation for tonight. I'm Tucker Carlson. We'll see you tomorrow, Tuesday night, 11 p.m. Eastern, live as always. Thanks for watching.
I believe that New Orleans should have a better plan, or maybe this plan worked just fine for those people who cannot find shelter.
I think the plan worked.
Barrel Dow down about 9 points. Of course, our business team is working every angle of the story. We'll have more on that coming up. And also ahead on Fox News Live, the power of Hurricane Get to people who are trapped inside their homes. We'll show you more of this rescue straight ahead. And Katrina, not over yet. We'll show you where the storm is headed now. 50 miles an hour, wind, heavy rain expected, maybe even some tornadoes thrown into the mix. Keep it right here on Fox News Channel, the most powerful name in back through some kind of a miracle, Shep. Tell us, is an evacuation order in effect now?
What they've done is, Bridget, they are urging, they say their policy has always been evacuate the city, and that they're now urging anyone in the city of New Orleans to leave for their own sake. And here's the reason. The water is rising in the city. It's not rising rapidly. New Orleans is in a bowl. The bowl did not fill initially. I'm quoting the Jefferson Parish manager, which is basically a county.
All right. I'm just going to fill the gap here. We're going to keep trying to get Shepard back on the phone. But as you just heard him say, yeah, it's official now that the mayor of New Orleans saying that there's an evacuation and emergency order in effect. But as Shep pointed out, it always has been the policy to leave. And again, the problem is those levee breaches have caused the water to rise. With all that water on the streets, emergency services have not been able to get through and get help to the people in homes like the one you're looking at. We don't know how that fire started, but it's been burning this morning, and it is just a near impossible situation. Rescue crews have just been searching by air sometimes. What they've had to do in some cases is actually land on the roofs of buildings and take axes and hack their way through the roofs to get to the people who are trapped on the top floors of their homes. All right, as we say, Katrina.
Tuesday evening, bringing 12 inches of rain south of Fort Lauderdale, and then making a second landfall, again strengthening in the Gulf of Mexico from a 2 to a 3 to a 4 and a 5, making its second landfall in Burris, Louisiana at 6.
Bill, let's take a look at what we can see along Highway 49, where there have been gusts of up to 190 miles an hour yesterday and a flood surge of more than 32 feet. Let's take a look inside some of these small family-owned businesses along this highway to show you what it looks like inside, what these businesses are up against, what they're going to have to rebuild. Here's a typical nightclub here known as The Club. You can go in the front door, or like me, you can just walk through this window here. That's because the window has been blown out completely, like all the glass all along this. And take a look in here. The whole floor knocked out, covered with water, cigarette machine toppled. All the tables, all the bar, just a mess. And it's like that every single store, every single building along this highway. that we can see. You come across here, ripped off all the siding. This is a nail salon here, Lisa's Nail Salon. It says walk-ins are welcome. You can walk in through the door, through the window, through the wall. One thing we have seen, a sign of progress here, we've seen some bulldozers come in and clear the way. So at least now emergency personnel, rescue personnel are getting closer to the cove, where a lot of people certainly do need their assistance. Back to you in New York.
All right, Steve.
Refineries online. Experts say the storm could push the national average of a gallon of gasoline past the $3 a gallon mark.
These buildings, the windows are completely blown out. I'm going to push in here tight to the Hyatt Hotel, and you can see that every single window here throughout this Hyatt Hotel is absolutely blown out. You can see bedrooms and beds, and it looks like a bomb completely blew up this side of the building. The white has completely been torn off and at least half of the dome. This will be completely destroyed. No firefighters anywhere in sight. In fact, there's nobody in sight. We've got a complete mall that appears to be completely damaged. The front of this Target completely demolished. Rooftops gone. Unbelievable damage. The parking lot looks like a lake. No cars to be seen. There's a car that's halfway underwater. Looking at the racetrack here just north of New Orleans, completely flooded, and we can push in here tight to show you the roof has been completely torn off. There is no roof left on the top of this grandstand here at this racetrack. Unbelievable damage.
Seeking shelter from a horrific storm like Katrina can
17th Street Canal. Now, I want to remind everyone that these pictures are literally maybe a year and a half old. When it was a clear day, a satellite went over and took all of these great pictures. This is not today. Because if you were looking at today, the entire area over here would be filled in with water. Now we're going to zoom out a little bit. There's another canal just on the other side of your screen. I'll pan over a little bit here. Here's the other canal, the Marconi Canal. In between these two canals, they are separated by levees all the way along the canal to keep the water out. Well, if the levee broke right here, and it did, the water poured into this area, and the water poured much farther on down to the south.
And that's all residential area.
This is all residential here. Over here to the right, that's City Park Golf Course. Moving on down, we get down toward the Metairie Cemetery. Here's the Country Club of New Orleans. And then we're moving on down here following Canal Street, and so did the water, right on down into downtown New Orleans, Darren. And that's why today the weather and the pictures are going to be so much more dramatic than what the weather caused. It's actually what the dike or the levee itself broke. That's going to cause 90% of the damage that you see, that we hear about, that we pay for, or they pay for in New Orleans.
Absolutely amazing.
Stores like that will just explode in terms of growth in that region of the country. But it's not a very bright picture. It's basically a very sad story.
Ben Stein, thank you. Guys, I know that you've been noticing our floor manager waving around the book. You all have a copy of Ben's book. Gratis. Thank you, Ben. Today, these are new images coming into us, new video of obvious destruction. This is the New Orleans area. This is not going to be a traveled road anytime soon. There is absolutely, really no piece of this bridge that is intact. It is taken a beating. This has been an absolute disaster. The president has declared virtually all of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama disaster areas. Other images that we've seen just in the last few minutes, boats have been thrown onto highways, boats have been tossed all over the place. There is 80% of New Orleans flooded, 80% of New Orleans underwater right now. The levees are broken and they can't figure out why, and they're having a difficult time trying to fix the situation. The damage is staggering. Insurance companies are saying that they could be suffering losses anywhere between $9 billion, $30 billion has been thrown out there, but they just can't give you the actual estimate because they can't get out there to see the damage. All right, we got to get going.
Get some new video here that shows the devastation in New Orleans, where we are now being told that 80% of New Orleans is literally underwater. You can see one car that is just stranded out there in the middle of what became a highway that basically broke apart like Lego pieces. You can see the parts of this bridge just separated as it goes along the outside of this causeway here. And you know, really the most interesting thing today and the saddest thing today is that we're starting to see that although the center of New Orleans, the Latin quarter of New Orleans, not hit as hard as some might have thought, but when you get outside of that area to the poorer areas of New Orleans in particular, there is so much devastation. And some
weather watchers noting that there are some comparisons here to the reaction to Hurricane Andrew, that after they saw that Miami was spared, they looked then at the rest of the area outside, at just how very devastating and how much flooding and how much damage. And the other thing that keeps coming up today is the fact that this spread over really 3 times the area of Hurricane Camille, which was a more targeted hit. So the devastation here, some thinking at this point that it may be up into the $50 billion range, which would put it ahead of Hurricane Andrew, which is the costliest hurricane to ever hit our country and the most damaging and devastating to people's lives and their livelihoods and their homes. We also have seen stories throughout the day today, just heart-wrenching stories of people who are separated from their families. They can't call them, they can't reach them in any way to figure out who is okay, who's not okay. And also just the incredible frustration of those who are wanting so much to get close to come back in, those who did evacuate, to get back into these areas and get a sense of what the damage is to their homes or whether or not they have any homes left at all to go back to. And the emergency officials urging people that they are not allowed to come back into these areas of New Orleans or the areas surrounding some of the most damaged parts of Gulfport, of Biloxi, where we still don't know, still haven't had really good looks at the damage there. Also some reports that we really haven't heard a lot of news from Slidell, from Bay St. Louis, from those areas that are in between New Orleans and Gulfport, in those areas, and we just don't have a sense yet of the damage there. Although, as you can see from these shots, the choppers are now up in the air. They've been doing a lot of rescuing, getting people literally off their roofs as the hot sun has baked the people who are being rescued from these areas today. Live in New Orleans, following this whole story for us throughout the day, where we've seen looting of grocery stores in that area, and everybody has literally been told to get out of the city if they are still there. We go to Phil Keating, who's been watching all of this unfold, this devastation that we've seen today. Hello, Phil.
Hello, Martha. The blue skies and sunshine, clearly deceptive if you thought the destruction and damage of Hurricane Katrina was all done yesterday. It looks like things could even get worse as the day grows longer and the days ahead. That's because the levee system, that all-protective levee system that protects the city of New Orleans, which is below sea level, and it relies on the underground pumps to pump all rainwater and stormwater out of the city. What was damaged during the hurricane, it appeared that the flooding of the city that was feared by so many, 20 feet maybe predictions, wasn't going to happen, and certainly didn't happen. But then this morning, the water started to rise. The reports we're getting now, Canal Street, actually we have video of it, Canal Street underwater, Bourbon Street, Bourbon and Canal, that intersection. This morning when we went into the French Quarter, there was maybe a puddle at the most there. It is now 9 inches deep, and certainly the residents are seeing this. They're seeing block by block suddenly become submerged in some degree of water, whether it's 1 inch or 3 inches or more than a foot at this point. And everyone's starting to wonder, how high is it going to get? And nobody knows for certain. Emergency management leaders, not only for Orleans Parish, but for St. Bernard Parish and Jefferson Parish, they're all urging their residents that if they can leave, to go. Now, all the people who did evacuate before the hurricane, well, the State Department of Emergency Management and Preparedness is telling them, no, you can't come back yet, it's too soon, because the roadways are still full of debris, structurally unsound, unclear as to how safe it is to return to the city. So many people, so many thousands of people who left, they can't come back yet. And the people who stayed, well, now they're faced with the problem of water's coming in, it's rising, and they don't necessarily have a way out. Also, the twin span bridges that connect New Orleans to eastbound traffic going to Slidell, Louisiana, and then on to Mississippi, totally damaged, and now that highway is shut down. A boat of some sort slammed into that twin span bridge during the hurricane, so that's out of commission. To the west, I-10 is submerged. The causeway over Lake Pontchartrain, that is damaged as well. So there's a serious issue of how are people going to get out. Now, just in the past 20 minutes, we've seen 2 very lengthy convoys of National Guard camouflage trucks as well as FEMA vehicles, all now heading into the city. They'd all been on standby until really just recently, because early this morning, emergency managers wanted to assess the situation and try to get all of those convoys that had backed up as far to the west as Dallas, as far to the east as Atlanta, trying to get all that water, food in, generators, and ice as well, because the people clearly
are going to be desperately needing it soon. Martha?
Phil, go back, if you would, to the question about Bourbon Street and Canal Street in those areas and where the water seems to be rising. Where do they think that water is coming from?
Well, they think it's coming from underground. Through the system, the storm system underneath the city, there are a series of underground pumps, powerful pumps that operate on diesel fuel and electricity. But of course, the electric grid is completely decimated at this point. And some of those pumps definitely were overrun. 3 sections of the levee were breached. So you can see, as you walk around the French Quarter, as we did this morning, you can see out of bricks, cracks in bricks and pipes along the street, all of a sudden water is just coming out. And you're thinking, well, that must be a weak point where the resistance as the water underneath the city's building up because it can't get pumped out fast enough. And so the big question is, how fast is it going to spread? Is this worst case scenario going to develop? Or is this just a temporary flash flooding problem, if you will, that perhaps in a few hours can be resolved either naturally or by engineers who are now inside the city trying to resolve this as fast as possible?
So, Phil, they don't have any real sense of how much water is down there, you know, in terms of figuring out how much more it could flood that area and how much danger the French Quarter might still be in.
Yeah, it's an enormous unknown at this point, and for residents, it's enormously confusing because all phone lines are down.
We're glad we have a connection with you. I'm going to have to ask you to hold on, though, because we do have someone on the phone that we want to talk to for just a moment. Let me bring in Dr. Jimmy Guidry, who is the state medical officer of Louisiana. Dr. Guidry, good to have you with us. I know that you've been doing some evacuations of 4 hospitals. What can you tell us about the situation there?
Well, as shown in the footage, certainly a lot of water to deal with and a lot of people that are stranded and being brought to areas to get them out of risk. So having to deal with the fact that we need to evacuate as many folks that we can to save as many lives as we can, and very much having to deal with the fact that hospitals have lost power and our generator power and are requesting supplies, and the ability for us to get them supplies and get patients evacuated is being tested, and we're bringing every resource we can possibly get our hands on to make sure that we save as many lives as we possibly can.
Tell me a little bit about the medical situation. We understand that there were about 500 patients that you're trying to transport to the Superdome and to some other locations. Tell us about that process.
Well, at this point, there are several bases of operation that when we pick people out of harm's way, we bring them to those bases. And from those bases, we try to get them out to high ground where we can put them on a bus or put them on an ambulance, whatever the need might be. We're also evacuating people by helicopter. And certainly when people are ill and in this situation, they'll get more ill, tests all our medical abilities to make sure that we don't lose any patients.
And how are you transporting them? There were some reports that some people are going by boat, some by helicopter. Is that right?
That is correct. Every mode of transportation that can be used has been used to make sure we save as many lives as we can.
How confident are you in terms of the generator capability and the situation inside the Superdome and how safe a place that will continue to be for these patients?
Well, our efforts are certainly to move as many of those folks as we can, as quickly as we can. Right now we feel that they're not at the extreme risk, but at the same time, there's certainly no conveniences there with the power outages. So their health will deteriorate, and we need to make sure we get them out of harm's way as soon as we can.
Have you had a lot of people who have injuries from the hurricane? Tell me about the numbers in terms of how many people were just already in the hospital when all this happened, and what kind of inflow you've seen of people who were injured in the hurricane.
Well, certainly when you look at the hospital census in that area, some 40 hospitals, some 2,500 patients that were in them that could not be moved because the risk of a trip prior to the storm would have put them at risk. And now they're in a situation that having to make the trip, with which we would prefer they didn't have to, puts them even at greater risk. But certainly there were a large number of patients in hospitals, and then you're having to deal with all those being rescued and what condition we find them in.
What are your concerns in terms of, disease or problems that may come up tomorrow and the next day and beyond in terms of the water and the, just germs and bacteria in the water?
Well, certainly the fact that there's loss of power, and loss of water pressure. Our concern is that certainly if people drink water, that they're able to either boil their water or sanitize their water or have bottled water. That's one way diseases spread. The other is if they have breaks in their skin and they're out in this water, they're likely to get infections. There's also a concern about snake bites, obviously. That was part of the experience in Florida. But the main concern is trying to make sure as we get them out of here that we get them back to as close to their original health as we can, because the stress of being there for so long without power puts their immune system at risk, put their ability to fight infection at risk. And our goal would be to make sure we get them out of there as quick as we can and make sure that they get as healthy as they can, as quick as they can.
All right, Dr. Guidry, thank you very much for talking with us. I know this is a really very busy and difficult time for you, and we wish you good luck in getting those patients safely to the Superdome. Thank you, Doctor. All right, as we watch these incredible pictures and just rescue after rescue, as the National Guard and the military have come in to help the Coast Guard out in some of these rescue efforts, we want to bring in Tim Romer, former congressman and member of the 9/11 Commission, to talk a little bit about the role of FEMA and what the federal government will have in store for these areas. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
You know, the day after, this has been a real shock of just how devastating this hurricane has been. Tell me a little bit about what the efforts of FEMA will be and how their role in this will work.
Well, from a congressional point of view, as a former member of Congress,
the water from coming in, he believes that's a process that will take at least days, figuring out where it's all coming in. Stopping it will take more days, says the mayor. And then getting the water out, according to the mayor, at best estimate, the best case scenario would be a couple of weeks. There is no power to all of southeastern Louisiana. 750,000 customers without power. In many cases across 5 different areas, according to multiple local officials, including the president of the parish and the mayor.
Well, Shepard, I can tell you your home state has been hit very hard by this hurricane, and Biloxi, in some cases, has been flattened. The scenes here are staggering along the Gulf Coast. We're just off of Highway 90 here, and this was a neighborhood of townhomes and 2-story condominiums that is now completely reduced to rubble. Much of it has washed behind us here in large piles of debris, wood and cars even. And Tommy, can you see that that burgundy car over there under the tree? You see that large oak tree also toppled. Walk this way with me. This, by the way, Shepard, is a hurricane tie-down. They use it to strap the wall frame to the floorboards, and this is just one of the many pieces of debris that we're seeing out here, but it's big pieces of debris, like sections of brick wall that are now littering the ground, cinder blocks. There's porcelain toilets over there, large air conditioning units, big pieces of trees, logs, that sort of thing. You can see that white car there is buried under boards, and beyond that there's a red car that one of the people in the neighborhood told me was over on a beachfront home. This building right here, this 3-story building, as you can see, has been pretty seriously damaged. There was one right next to it, an identical twin to this building, that is completely gone. Again, we're in Biloxi. We're seeing this stuff for the first time. There are crews here. Watch the wires here on the ground. There are crews here that are still going through homes and looking for possible victims. We'd heard rumors that they had recovered a number of bodies from this very area, but we haven't been able to confirm that. I did just learn that they found a gas leak at one of these houses over here, which is obviously a dangerous situation. I talked to the family that owns this house right here. Obviously, this house has been totaled. The guy who lives there has lived there a long time. His mom lives just down the beach. Her house is completely flattened, and that house survived Hurricane Camille. So again, Shep, the damages here are staggering. They're still trying to tally the losses. Casino Road down the beach, serious damages, and we're going to get down there and show you pictures of that shortly.
Rick, I'm out of time, but very quickly, our relief organizations, the Red Cross, are they able to get in there and on a 90-degree day give people food and water and the necessities of life?
Yeah, there are some relief stations. We saw some Red Cross, but the highways in many cases are impassable, and it's very difficult for vehicles to get through. So they're encouraging people to stay off the roads if they can and allow the emergency workers to get in.
There are Rick Leventhal live in Biloxi. Rick, thanks. There are no such relief stations in the center of New Orleans today. First, they have to get the water out, and they've not been able to accomplish that. Very difficult situation in Mobile, Alabama, as well, east on the coast. Our correspondent, Jonathan Seri, is there now. Jonathan.
Hi, Shepard. Take a look behind me. This is the Mobile River, and that large structure you see is a flotel or a floating hotel. This type of structure is used with oil drilling rigs out in the Gulf of Mexico. What they would do was take a structure like this out to the oil drilling platform, connect it to the platform, and then this is where the workers would sleep and eat. It's built to hold 450 people. Now, there's a boat just on the right side of the flotel. You see the men on the boat. They're inspecting it for damage. It was dry docked on a barge across the river at a shipyard where it was undergoing routine maintenance. And then when Katrina came, the winds were so strong and the storm surge so strong that this whole structure that weighs more than 12,000 tons was carried not down the river but upstream against the current and then slammed into this bridge known as the Cochrane Africatown Bridge here in Mobile. It is the bridge that carries U.S. Highway 98 over the Mobile River, and it is closed to traffic. Ordinarily, this is the route that trucks carrying hazardous materials would take to go through the city of Mobile, because of course they're not allowed to go through the Wallace Tunnel, but now that's closed, and so the trucks are having to take a much larger route involving Interstate 65 and Highway 59. But right now, the structure here, see how small those men are on that little boat inspecting it compared to the structure as a whole. I'm told from the water up to the top of the crane you see on the right, it's 260 feet. Officials tell me it's going to take at least 3 days for them to remove this flotel from the bridge. Shep, back to you.
Jonathan, very quickly, same question. Are they able to get water and food into people left behind?
As far as residents in Mobile are concerned, yes, but they suffered considerably less damage than their neighbors in Mississippi and Louisiana. So it's not a problem getting the bare essentials in, but there are other things that are hard to get. Gasoline is hard to get, and ice is hard to get in many places.
Jonathan, thank you. We drove out of this city 4 hours ago thinking we were evacuating. No gas for an hour and a half, no food, no water.
Shepard, this is a typical house right now near the coast in Gulfport, Mississippi. As you can see, it's a wooden frame house and not much is left. It's the same as just about every other house on this street. Now, with me now is probably one of the luckiest men in Mississippi, Richard Harston. Now, Richard, you decided to ride out the hurricane in this house where there's no more roof, no more walls. Tell me, why did you do that?
Well, I had made arrangements to go with some friends to the other side of Orange Grove and back away from the beach, and tried to call them, and I couldn't get a line out. So many times the tidal surge they say is coming hasn't come in the past, so I just decided that I'd probably be all right here.
So you heard there were bad hurricanes before. It didn't pan out. This time you decided to ride it out here. Now, 4 tornadoes passed by this house. After you lost your roof, you decided to try and make a run for that post office, that stone building down there. Tell us what happened when you got out onto the street.
When I got out into the street, I hit the ground about 150 yards up, and then I hit it again about 1,000 yards on the backside of the Oasis Hotel.
So you remember running out here, hitting the ground. Suddenly, you were 150 yards down the road. Suddenly, another 1,000 yards down the road. You literally flew down your own front street.
Yeah, pretty much.
And are you injured at all?
No, I was fine. As soon as I got around the hotel, I ducked in behind the hotel, and I was...
Not a scratch on him after flying 1,000 yards, a man who tried to ride out the hurricane in this house. Shepard, some more video we'd like to show you. We can't get to it ourselves with our truck because it's just about 1,000 yards down the street, but there are so many big containers blocking the road, no one can get there. It's one of those sea lions. There are some tourist attractions around here. One of them had 4 sea lions in it. Those sea lions now are scattered all over southern Mississippi. This one in a puddle down the street, slowly burning to death here in the mid-afternoon Mississippi sun. Shepard, back to you.
Steve Harrigan live for us on the southern coast of Mississippi. Steve, thank you. Our best to all of those there in their efforts to rebuild and recover and bury their dead in the days and weeks ahead. An enormous crisis, an enormous national disaster is upon us. President Bush, of course, is cutting his vacation in Crawford short and returning to the White House. We'll get the latest on that in just a moment. The latest quote from the president of of Jefferson Parish here in New Orleans. We'll no longer be the Jetsons here. We are now the Flintstones, operating on the most minimal circumstances known to man, with the possibility of disease ahead. So much work in the city of New Orleans and down the coast now necessary, and so many prayers are now asked for by the tens of thousands of people left behind. Coverage continues in a moment.
You can run around looking at house after house after house, or you can relax. JustListed.com emails you every home you want to see as soon as it's listed. JustListed.com, where your next home finds you.
Hey, toilet here. Please stop the running. Not just the old handle jiggle.
Vigilant about taking care of their drinking water. Make sure they're boiling their water before they eat or drink, and even be careful not to use contaminated water to do things like brush your teeth, or not use contaminated water in ice cubes, that sort of thing. It may be
roadblock after roadblock of trees that had fallen down and were blocking the road, and we had citizens who had chainsaws in their vehicles who were getting out of their cars and going up and cutting a path through the trees in order to allow vehicles to get through. And then we'd go another 100 yards, 500 yards down the road, and there'd be another set of trees blocking the road. Sometimes we could drive around the trees onto the shoulder.
All right, Rick, I'm just going to break in for 1 second because, Rick, if you can hear me, just hold on for 1 second. I want to get back to you, but we're just watching some amazing video, and these people have to be very, very happy to see this Coast Guard helicopter hanging over their rooftop, and it's just unbelievable looking at these pictures. Literally, the rooftops are just looking like floating pieces in the middle of a huge lake as these people literally climbed their way up to the roof, and they've been waiting there for God knows how many hours at this point, and they are now finally seeing some help on the way as we watch this this Coast Guard worker who is coming down off this helicopter, trying to zero in, trying to find some place where he can land. And then what we've seen in the past is that it's obviously still windy there. We can see that he's blowing around. You can see the wind is pushing the water away from this area, and probably also the wind picking up from the helicopter that's hanging over the area as well. But we've seen them going into these areas, lowering those sort of cage-like people carriers that you've seen, putting the people on them and bringing them to safety. But look at the devastation around where this man is, and you can just see that he's going to make his way across a piece of wooden board that is linking one rooftop of one house to another rooftop where there are so many people waiting. There's also people over on the other side. You can see someone in a green shirt who's over in the other area of just a completely wrecked home to the top of your screen there. And these people just huddled together. Obviously, they are very happy to see that that the Coast Guard has come in to help them. It looks like a family of 2, 4, 6, 8 people perhaps waiting on this rooftop for help, and this is just really heartbreaking, and the kinds of scenes that we've been watching as people wait to be helped. No water in these areas, no electricity. You know, you forget so easily how we use the conveniences of life all day long to communicate with each other, and in this day and age to be so cut off from the outside world. Just imagine yourself for a moment and your own home. If you're sitting on the roof of your house with your family around you and wondering whether or not anyone's going to get to you before, before you've run out of water, run out of food, and how many days and how long you'd be able to hold on there, and not having any sense of whether or not anybody knows that you're there, and you know that your family can't get in, there's no way to get across those roads for any of your family or friends to try to get at you with these kind of conditions that are so clearly devastating. Rick Leventhal, these pictures that we're looking at are from the New Orleans area. I want you to get, and I know that you're not looking at these pictures with us, and I'm sorry I broke in before to interrupt you, but I'd love for you to go on and tell us a little bit about the area that you're in, which I know is just, some are saying is perhaps the hardest hit area of this whole situation.
This right here was known as the Quiet Waters townhouse and condominium, and it's been completely flattened. In fact, we talked to the owners who are still searching out here for some of their possessions. This is all that they found, and they just moved in here on Thursday. They had to evacuate on Sunday, and this is what's left. And this place was completely wiped out. These back here were 2-story condominiums that are gone. You can see in the back there big piles of wood and debris. Apparently, it all just got pushed back there, not by the wind, but by the water. Now, this place over here is called the St. Charles. This building right here, still standing, obviously, but next door there was a twin to that building. An exact replica of that building has been completely destroyed. And this scene, I don't know if we're going to have time to show you the beachfront, but this scene is repeated up and down the beach. And before, I think we may be running out of time, but just look at this tree right here. You can see stuff in the branches. That's a pretty good indication of how high the water was when it was at its peak. And it looks to be at least 15 feet, possibly 20 feet or more above sea level. And if we get a chance later, we can show you the view from the beachfront there